this. Okay. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Ace. You can call me Ace. I'm the country director of ITTI Philippines. So I'll be talking about lesson planning and how to utilize our books in the classroom. Okay, so I think for those teachers and those who are planning to become teachers, we should agree to these terms that planning is a thinking skill. You know, you are like a soldier going into a battle. You must have your strategies to do in order to win that kind of battle. It's important that you will be clear on what you are going to achieve, your students and you as a teacher. So, and this can only be done if you have your plans with you. You can also, with your plan, you can also predict probably not 100%, but at least you know what to do, whatever probably the feedback of your students to a certain lesson that you are doing. So you're not caught off guard, what I'm trying to say. So general ideas to consider in lesson planning for those who are teaching. This could be a refresher for those who want to learn how to become a teacher. These are the things we have to have in mind. Atmosphere. These are the things that we consider. For example, students' feelings towards the lesson. Are we planning a lesson that is fun for our students? The learners. Will our students benefit from this lesson? You know, this is one thing later that you will also discover, because when we are using books too much, sometimes we depend on the book and it doesn't connect to our learners. So we have to make sure as teachers that we bridge that gap to make that the material be useful to our students, because that's the reason why they're learning English. They're learning from us. The aims, what will the learners achieve? And how about you? What are you going to achieve also in doing this lesson? The teaching point, the subject matter of the lesson, these are also part of the planning that you have to consider. The task and procedures, we mean here the activities and the sequence of the activities that you are going to be employing. Teachers can be very creative, but sometimes if too much creativity, fun, we might compromise learning. So if it's also too much, too serious learning, maybe it's too boring. So we have to strike the right balance between fun and learning. The challenge, as teachers, it's part of our plan to anticipate problems, our problems in doing the lesson, and also anticipate what students are going to have difficulties with when they are doing the lessons in our classes. The materials, what to bring. Are you going to use picture cards? Are you going to use audio? Are you going to use your projector, computer, etc.? And the classroom management, of course. How are you going to have your seating arrangement, your grouping, and even the language? I always say to students or to trainees that as teachers, especially when native speakers wanted to become a TEFL or a TESOL trainer or teacher, we have to watch out our language, because it does not give us a license that we can speak the language, that we can be a teacher of the English language. There is what we call grading our language. So depending on the kind of students that we have to make sure that we are understood by our students inside the classroom. And that's part of your classroom management. Now, since I'll be talking about lesson planning, here is a structure of an effective lesson plan based on the Scrivener's book that I have read. So an effective lesson plan most likely should have these elements: clear, consistent structure. And when we say clear, consistent structure, you should have your opening and your closing routine. You should have your lead-in, your warm-up. You cannot just start your lesson by saying, okay, open your book. and then let's begin. No, you have to engage your students. You have to make them ready to be um, prepared to study and to listen to your lesson. And you must have a certain kind of assessment to evaluate your students if they're learning your lesson. And reflection. As teachers nowadays, I don't know if you've heard about that, but reflective teaching is a new thing for teachers. We are always told that as teachers we have to reflect on our activities, on our lesson. Are we doing the right thing? Which one is not working? Which one is not? So that we can use effective strategies. We also have to have activities that are specific and observable. So the in our lesson plan, the words that we use in our, when we write the lesson plans, should be action words, because these are easier to see and to do for us teachers. We don't have to have the time to interpret what do we mean by a certain phrase or a certain instructions that is not clear to us. So make sure that we use action words. For example, we always say group students into two, or um, the teacher is going to like present, present, divide. Um, for example, students are going to read. So action words. We don't normally use the word comprehend, understand. These are a bit vague in lesson planning. It has to be time bounded also. Our activities must be very specific. For example, our lead-in should only be around 5 minutes or 7 minutes. We have to put time allotment for that. Interaction. Are we doing students to students interaction? Is it teacher to students interaction? Or is it students to teacher? Or is it student to teacher interaction? So we have to include and look for this in our lesson plan. And normally in our TEFL training, we see if your lesson plan is balanced, is effective, if the interaction is clear, meaning there is teacher to students interaction, there is students to students interaction, there's student to teacher interaction, and then it goes back to teacher to students interaction, then students to students interaction, not just teacher to student, teacher to student, teacher to student, because definitely if that happens in your lesson plan, we will call your attention and we'll tell you that it's probably a boring lesson plan. Then another one is your lesson plan must be student-centered. So what do we mean by student-centered lesson plan? There must be contextualization. Well, we're using books now, and books are made probably from the US or a UK publisher or Australia. But we are teaching our students probably in Peru, in Egypt, in for example, here in Asia, in Thailand, in Vietnam. So there are some contexts that may not be applicable, or there may be some topics that are difficult to understand without a context, without a scenario. So we have to put a situation in which this lesson will be used and applicable. And another one is localization. We have to apply a certain topic to our own area, the kind of students that we're teaching. For example, if I'll be teaching Filipino students, for example, and I'm using an American book, and the book says season, and it has 4 seasons, definitely our students cannot relate to that because we don't have 4 seasons. We only have 2. So I have to localize it. Or maybe there was one instance that we talked about landmarks. And the book, it's a Cambridge book, and it talks about Big Ben, Sydney Opera House, the Eiffel Tower. And our students here, they don't know those landmarks. So it would be, there's a detach or disconnect from the material and the students. So we have to bridge that one. Well, I'm not saying that we should not teach those, but at least you begin with what is known, localize, begin with what is familiar to your students before you go to foreign places, for example. Then overall, what we are doing, the activities, our structure, this must be according to your school. Definitely, we are not teach well unless you are teaching as a freelance teacher, then you can have probably your own method, your own style, your own system. But if you will be teaching and working for a certain school, all the things that you are doing must be based according to what they tell you. It should be according to the syllabus they give you. It must be according to the certain competencies that you need to achieve, or a certain approach or method. Some schools, they would say, we are using an highlighting communicative approach, for example. Or there was a school in Vietnam where I taught, and their focus was more on lexis. So they believe in lexical approach. So we always begin our lesson with vocabulary. So, and whenever we highlight and teach reading, we highlight vocabulary. So all activities are based on vocabulary. Well, that's what they believe in, and that's what I have to teach because I'm working for them. So everything that we do here, if you have all these ingredients in your lesson plan, I must say that you are not, you'll never go wrong. It will be an effective lesson plan. According to here, Walt Disney, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So I've talked a lot, I know. And later in this presentation, I'll be showing to you how I manipulate a certain unit from a book, and then how to make things that I have said earlier into practice. But one thing that's important I'd like to highlight from the lesson planning I've mentioned earlier is sequencing of activities. I said that teachers can be very creative. If it's all fun, maybe we compromise learning. If it's too much learning, we may bore the students. So here, as teachers, in sequencing activities, in planning our lessons, we have to consider, is our activity a high energy activity? What do you mean by high energy activity? Does it involve students to students interaction? Is it fun? Is it a kind of a game for them? Is it too serious? So these are what we call high energy activity. Pair work, group work, mingling activities, allowing your students to stand and go around, that's high energy activity. And we are always told that we begin our class with high energy activity. That's why a lead in, a warm up, others call it warm up, others call it warmer, others call it motivational activity. It should be a high energy activity. We don't begin. For example, in that experience I said earlier about a lexical approach, they believe in vocabulary. So I should not begin with dictation only or a spelling activity, even though that's vocabulary, because that's not high energy activity. So I have to recreate a vocabulary activity to make it high energy activity. So how I did it? So I did a message relay. So I divide the class into two groups and then gave them certain words, and then so they work in groups. Now the vocabulary warm-up activity became high energy activity because it involves students talking, students working in groups. Now followed by low energy activity. So low energy activity, these are probably seat works, individual work. When students are having fun, it's now the time to settle down and try to absorb what you have taught them. So what I normally do is, from the game that I just introduced to them, I reinforced that game with a seat work, an easy to do activity that they can do on their own. So that becomes low energy. Then after low energy, followed again by high energy activity. So I have to devise another activity that would engage students, involve students in groups, in pairs. Then after that, low energy. And then we end with high energy activity. Why it's important to end it with high energy activity? This is based on experience. I've been teaching for 15 years. Parents are waiting outside, when you end your class with writing activity, that's low energy. And when parents outside are going to ask their student, their son or their daughter, how was your class? They would say, it was boring. We just answered some essay or writing. But if you make use of that writing into a high energy activity, put them in groups, in pairs, recreate what they have to write in a fun way, then probably when they go out, they will be all smiles. So when parents ask them, and when they see their children happy, of course, they definitely they'll send their students or their daughter, their children to your school. And if there is, I'm not sure in your country, but here in Asia, we are always, teachers are always evaluated based on students' feedback and parents' feedback. So we have to be very careful about it, that our parents, our students are satisfied with the service that we give, because that will give us job. Otherwise, probably you won't last long in this industry. So sequencing activities, whatever that activity is, always think high and low and high sequence. Now, utilizing books. So how to bring the book to life and put everything in practice. Let me share. So this is what I'm using in my class. This is a digital version of the book that I bought. This is from Macmillan. Uh, it's Academy Stars, the name of the book. Normally, well, I start with unit 2, because if it's unit 1, it's just getting to know. So unit 1, it says here, my busy week. You have this picture, and then you have vocabulary. The next page, you have songs. Then lesson 2, you have grammar time. Lesson 3, grammar focus with videos about grammar. And then you have reading. You have lesson 5, sounds and letters. 6, language and use. So definitely one unit has around, let me check, around 8 lessons. Yeah, I think so, because we're now moving to the next unit. Wait, let me move back. So yes, so it's already review lesson. So in this particular book, one unit has 8 lessons. Now, how do I make use of that high-low energy activity and bring the book to life? It's a lot easier to use books, because you don't have to think of what to teach, what vocabulary to include, what activities. All you need to do is just make the right balance. So normally, if you ask your students to open their book and then go to page 18, and then you ask them to answer activities that they do, for example, this week, then they will just write here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's going to be boring, right? But if you are going to put them in pairs, in groups of 3s, and then you ask them to talk about what's in the picture, identify who are these children or what are they doing in the picture, and then relate it. Children, especially children, they always love to talk about themselves. So we always connect our lesson to what they do. So we always ask them. So for example, this one is basketball. So that we say, when do you play basketball? Do we play basketball on a Monday, Tuesday, or what time of the day do we play basketball? Is it during class time or after class? So we always ask them about it. And they can do this in their groups. So if you have, let's say, 35 students in your class, and you put them in small groups, and then they talk about this particular page, it cuts the time that you will be asking some students to participate. If you ask them one by one, then probably and definitely you will only have 3-4 students to answer your questions. But our goal in language classes is to maximize, speaking opportunities, speaking time of our students in the class. So if we put them in groups and ask them and give them activities that they will talk about this picture, these activities in the picture, then we are increasing the speaking time, maximizing the speaking opportunity, the student talk time, the STT, student talk time of our students. So we're enhancing their speaking um, ability. Then from here, maybe they're talking about something on their own. They're using their own vocabulary. For example, this one, they would say, the boy here is just jumping, and then they are climbing. But when you move to the next page, then they will realize that, oh, what he's doing is what we call do gymnastics or gymnastics, for example. One thing about this book that is nice because it has some videos. It has which I well, if you're using the printed one, it may not have, but this one is a digital version, so it is interactive. I use this for my online classes. But in your classrooms, when you have face-to-face classes, then you can just probably project or use a projector to show this to your students. Then students are going to discover the vocabulary. So you are not basically teaching them the words, but they are going to learn it by themselves. So again, you are promoting interaction among your students. If you like singing and if you know how to sing, in my case, I don't know how to sing that much. So I skip this singing part and instead I go directly to the next part. The grammar time. Now, in the grammar time, I don't just ask students to open the book and read. What I do here is I ask them to close their books and then I print some portion of this. Like I cut this one, box 1, 2, 3, 4, and I put them around the room. Or maybe if I have too many students and I don't want them to be noisy, I don't know if you know jigsaw reading. They will read, a certain group will read a certain part. Maybe group one will read the first box, and then another group will read 2 and 3 and 4. So there are 4 groups corresponding to the 4 boxes. And then they will be sharing instead of the whole class reading everything all together. So each group will be reading only one part. And then after reading a certain minute, like you give them 2 minutes to read, then they're going to share to another group. So it becomes speaking, reading and speaking activity. So normally their groups will have stronger students, good students. So I ask these stronger students to move around. So I ask them to stand and transfer to other groups, and then they will be sharing what they have read in their group. So a leader of group one will go to group two and talk about what they have read. And I should highlight they play and then they don't play because this is what they will be learning later on. Then after doing that jigsaw reading, everyone is going to answer 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Now that is low energy. So I started with high energy when I asked them to read in groups, but when I ask them to answer individually, it becomes low energy. Now, how do I make this high energy again? In the checking, I will ask, maybe I will put on the board Kirsty, Henry, Eva, and Owen. I will ask them to stay behind the other end of the room, and then I will read number one, and then they have to make a line. So it becomes high energy again. Even the checking of their answers can be high energy. So it doesn't have to be, a complicated activity. Then after this high energy activity comes the grammar focus. So one good thing about this material is it has a video. So I will just play the video and then they are going to watch. So it's just a 2-minute video about I play, I don't play, and then followed by this activity. Now for this activity, I have to make it, because watching the video is probably low energy because they're not doing anything. So I have to make it high energy this time for number 2. So in pairs, they're going to be helping each other, arranging these words and making it into a sentence. And then after this, after they arrange the words and make a sentence that is high energy activity, then I will ask them to do it on their individual book. Why? Well, maybe they are working on this. Probably I give them worksheet. So there's one worksheet for them, but they have their own books too. Some parents, they want to see their children's book being answered. So you have to just ask them to whatever they have answered on their worksheet to transfer on their book so that their books are also answered. And most probably that's 90% already correct because you have already perform that activity as a group. Then to check this, because that's arrangement of these words are high energy, transferring it to their book individual, it's low energy. Then checking again should be high energy. So maybe I'll use these pictures. I call it a gallery walk. So I put these pictures. I'll print this bigger around the room, and then I ask my students to stay in the middle and ask them, or I read one sentence. For example, I have a music lesson on Monday. Then they have to look for that. Which picture is I have a music lesson on Monday? Is it A, B, C, D, E? And then when they go to that certain picture, I ask them all together, okay, can you read and say the sentence, I have a music lesson on Monday? So yeah, that's it. So that becomes high energy activity. Now, to end this part of the grammar, of course, we have to relate it again to our students, to contextualize it, to localize it. Then in pairs, in groups, I ask them, okay, so can you talk about your own schedule from Monday to Sunday? What are certain activities that you do? And so they'll be sharing. So after pair work or small group, a group of three maybe, then ask them to move around. Certain members will move around and share until they're able to share to as much number of students in class. So again, we are promoting speaking opportunity. We are maximizing speaking opportunity in our classes. So this is how I manipulate this particular part of the unit of the book. And this is what we mean by bringing the book to life, not just open the book and then answer, read, answer, listen, and answer. But we have to involve, engage students, put them in pairs, close the book, do it in real activity, print, project on the board. So probably a lesson of 50 minutes or an hour. In Vietnam, for example, where I taught, our classes are as long as an hour and 30 minutes, 90 minutes. So we have around 8 to 10 sequences of activities in that particular lesson. And we meet normally twice a week only. So because we are after class program, meaning after students attend their regular school, during the daytime, they go to our language center and then they study English, specific English only. And so we have to present a different way of learning English that's fun, that's communicative for them. Okay, so basically that's what I have to say. I have to say it quickly so that maybe you have questions, then we can entertain some questions. And this is what we do in our TEFL teacher training. Aside from, of course, teaching our future teachers the theory, then what's important is how to make use of the materials that they're provided and teach it effectively. And that is fun for their students without compromising learning. So that's it. Lillian, maybe do you have questions? I hope I did not speak too fast. Lillian, do you have questions? Or anyone who has questions, you may chat. So sorry. So Dr. Alice is asking, do colorful circles have different meanings? No, there's no meaning to the circles I made in the PowerPoint. It's just to differentiate and to, let me bring that color. when I made this circles, it is just uh, to identify that this is for student centered activities and uh, structure. And then all these three, they overlap because it means that you cannot do one without the other. And also the the explanation is outside, meaning when we say student centered, we mean contextualization and localization. So Hagar is asking, could you please say the activity for grammar again? Well, I call it, I'm not sure if you are talking about when I ask my students to move around. So I mentioned few terms there. I mentioned gallery walk. I also mentioned, let me bring that up. Jigsaw puzzle, jigsaw reading, for example, jigsaw reading. So yeah, jigsaw reading is very useful because children don't, well, normally there are many children who don't like to read because one, it's difficult. I'm not specifying here the strategies for reading, but I'm specifying the sequencing of reading. There is a different way of teaching reading only. There's a sequence also in teaching reading. For example, you begin by pre-teaching the vocabulary or um, arousing students' curiosity about what they're going to read. But in this case, it's a very short reading text, so I did not focus on that. I wanted to show the activity that would make it fun for them. So I call it. It's not. It's not really that unique. We call it a jigsaw reading. So meaning you assign certain parts to different groups. And then in checking, we do gallery walk. And then here to match the words, arrange the words to make a sentence. Yeah, it's just jumbled words. Um, I cannot do activities due to the behaviors. So they always keep moving on. Yes, Sarah. Well, that that has to do with your classroom management. I got the same experience when I was a new teacher in Vietnam. I was given 35 students who are grades 2 or 3 and almost zero level. And when we do activities, it's chaos. So I have to set first rules. I have to make them um, so what I do is when I begin my class, I already arrange my classroom into small circles. So when I get in, they are already in small circles. So I can easily manipulate. I can easily bring one student to another circle. I can transfer one to another one. So it takes time to practice. Yeah, but it has something to do with classroom management. The book that I'm using, Shimo, is called Academy Stars. Yeah. It has a physical book and also a digital version. So when you buy the book, they will give you a code that you can key in Macmillan website. So it's a digital library. So you can have it as your own like library for kinds of books that you use. Effective web for activities. What do you mean by effective web activities? Can you clarify, Sarah? What do you mean by effective web activities? Like an online activities, you mean? Well, there are two things we have to consider for online classes. Are we doing activities that is synchronous or asynchronous, meaning while students are together or while they are at home doing it separately? So according to Oxford's research, a lot of online programs fail is because it lacks student engagement. Meaning, after we teach them online, they go home after an hour, after 2 hours, they go home, or we end the class for this week. That's it. It's the end. There's no follow up, there's no reinforcement. So, what I do if I have, for example, even children, elementary, grade 3, 4 years, grade 3, grade 4, I just use a Google form, not I forgot that, a Jamboard, a Google Jamboard. I call it Jamboard. So I have there a picture, and I ask them to comment, to engage, to talk, to chat in that um, in that board that we can do offline, and that is part of what we do after the class, because I understand our classes are limited. um, how to apply this high low technique with students for not to be boring during the class? Well, Mustafa, you just have to, for example, if you're using a book, if the book presents a picture, do not just rely on the picture, but maybe cut the pictures into pieces, and make it into a picture puzzle, and then they form it as a group. But you have to put some time limit, maybe let's say 3 minutes to form the picture. Whoever gets to the closest form of the picture, then they'll be the winner. Before you jump into whatever activity that they have into the book individually. So after the individual, then you give them another activity that would involve students to students interaction, that would involve pair work, group work, that would involve games, that would have time pressure on it, because kids, when you are giving them time limit, they feel excited to do it. So that's what I normally do. Even in my Mustafa, even in my high level students, for example, IELTS students, or highly academic classes, they tend to become boring classes because sometimes students just ask grammar or vocabulary. But it is our role as teachers to bring in life to what we do. How? We make sure that there is a lot of movement, a lot of changes in our activities. So, as I've mentioned earlier, if you have a 50-minute class or a 90-minute class, usually it involves 8 to 10 sequences of activities. My activities, for example, they don't go beyond 7 minutes. They're either 5 to 7. So after 5 to 7, we stop, then move to another activity. But it doesn't mean that when you move to another activity, it's a totally different activity. It could be a reinforcement activity, because we have to make sure that they learn something from that activity, not just all fun. How much time? Yeah, I think I've answered this. A and T school. Normally, I just give them 5 minutes. A lead in should not be more than 5 minutes. Reading, it depends on the purpose of reading. But if it's reading for, let's say, the first part of the reading is gist, right? Skimming. It should not be more than 2 minutes or 3 minutes. They have to do it quick. Why are we training our students to read fast? Initially, in the beginning, they'll have struggle, but as we keep doing this over and over again, they'll get used to it. What's the purpose? We are training our students to read fast because, let's face it, these students will take tests. And the ultimate, the bottom line of why they're attending English classes is because they want to get high score in reading tests. And by that time, hopefully, we are training them how to read fast and looking for answers. Okay, website. Sarah, you're asking for the website. I'll find the website. Well, there's no one particular website for all these things that I have mentioned, because the one I'm talking about now is based on years of experience that I'm using, and all these activities are tried and tested activities. They are not just based on theory, but applied to different age groups, kindergarten, elementary, high school, and even adults. Hagar, kindergarten students have writing tasks in their book. For example, they have a picture and they should describe it. How can I make this an activity before writing in the book? Kindergarten, KG means kindergarten, Hagar, if I'm not mistaken. Really? I'm not so sure about kindergarten having writing tasks. Mostly my kindergarten, it's just like reading and more on TPR, total physical response activity. If there is writing involved, mostly tracing letters, tracing words, or connecting one dot to another dot, connecting pictures to labels. Yeah, so how can you make students have writing tasks in their book? For example, they have a picture and they should describe it. How can I make this as an activity before writing in the book? Okay. So, but I'm not sure if KG is kindergarten, but if this is a kind of activity that you're going to do, normally what I do is I have jumbled letters. Vocabularies are, I print bigger letters and then cut them into letters and then put them somewhere inside the classroom, and then they have to run and then arrange it. If they can't, then they have to ask help from another member. So when they form all these words, then they know the vocabulary. Instead of just presenting the vocabulary, okay, these are words 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's sometimes boring. But if you involve students putting letters together to form a word, and then after sometimes, well, here in Asia, we students are good at using chopstick. So I even challenge them to use chopstick in putting letters together, to form a word. So it's fun for them. Then after putting the letters together to form a word, then we connect the word to the picture. We call it gallery walk. So or sometimes I put the word at the back of the student, and then another student will have the picture at the back. So they keep looking at each other's back, whoever is their match. So that could be fun too. But again, you have to put time
Sorry, I
limit.
want to say something. I mean by writing for KG, they write sentence like there is a cat. The cat sat on a mat, not just words.
Like the cat sat on a mat, for example. Is that what you're trying to say, right?
Yes, the cat any picture, and they try to sentence like I can see a cat or the cat sat on a mat,
Okay.
and these things.
Yes. So in that case, for I don't know how old are the children, but there must be a model.
6 years or 5 years, from five
Five
to six
years
years.
old. Yes. Oh, that's 6 years old, 5 years old. 5 years old, maybe. Well, never experienced teaching writing that age, but that here we don't normally ask them to write that much yet. But if you do that, there must be a model, and the model must be consistent. For example, the cat uh, sat on a mat. So there's a subject, cat, and that must be uniform. It could be cat, it could be dog, it could be whatever, bird. And then there must be, just like here in this book, one good thing about this book, all action words are colored blue. So play, play, do, play. In all units, from unit 1 to unit 8 or unit 10, from low level to high level, all grammar, all verbs are in blue, highlighted blue. So visual students can already anticipate, okay, the blue color must be in the middle or right after my subject. So they can visualize Hagar. So if students cannot, write sentences right away, at least they can imagine what they have to put into certain arrangements. At least that's what I do. I put them into certain colors. So all my subjects, it could be noun or pronoun, I must be consistent. They're all probably yellow. And then all my verbs are blue, and all negation, negative, not, don't, etc., should be in red. All adjectives will be in green. All objects will be in purple. So when I put them all together, it is consistent. And some students, visual students, can just see them directly. Some students, they don't even understand it, but they can follow the pattern.
You mean I write the cat in red, for example, sat on green, so they will understand that they will should start with the cat, the dog, anything.
Yes, yes. There must be a model. And
But
then followed by,
I shouldn't tell them sat is a verb or the cat is a noun.
yeah,
They should
no,
know this.
we don't normally say cat is a noun and sat is a past simple of sit and it's a verb. No, students don't get that. So that's why we use colors, and we use ordinary words such as name. This is an animal, or this is an action word, or we use total physical response. We do the action of sitting, so that they will see it. So colors and actions are really good combination for children to see, especially follow some patterns in writing. At least that's what I do in my kindergarten classes. As young, I've taught as young as 3, 4 years old.
Okay, children should write after me, or they should write after them by themselves. Is copying from the board something bad for writing?
Normally, there must be a model. The model is what you present, and then it must be clear, and then there must be an activity that they do on their own, but don't expect them to do it perfectly right away.
But in writing, they should copy after me, or should I leave them to write by themselves when we go to the
Write
writing
by themselves. Yeah, they have to write by
without
themselves.
copying, right?
Yes, yeah,
Without copying after me.
yes. They copy after
Okay.
you. How do you assess reading comprehension online, Dalil? Hmm. Um, when it comes to reading, Dalil, there are my you have to have you should know your purpose why you're giving the reading activity. Are you giving the activity to check, for example, specific information, or you want them to, I don't know, depending on what level and what's the purpose of the reading. But if it's going to be a low level reading, we always begin with what is concrete, what can be seen, before we go into what's abstract and difficult. So we ask certain questions after doing all the activities, for example, jigsaw reading, or even even online, what I do is QR code reading. So I hide the reading text inside a QR code. If they have a phone, then they can scan the QR code, and then it will reveal what the text they have to read. And then after revealing it, then there are some questions to follow. Um, Simple questions according to their level of understanding, so the difference or the difficulty here, sometimes when we are teaching a regular school, for example, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 5, they are not their level is mixed. So the material we're using is according to their grade level, not according to their proficiency level or their English level. So somehow you have to simplify the questions in their books to make it easier for them to understand. So we have to grade our language according to their level. But assessing their reading comprehension, we begin with simple questions from what is what can be seen, who is, where is, what is, before we go to why. Teacher, they don't have books. We are teaching with learning experience. What do you recommend? Books, material to work with? Um, as a teacher, if we are not required to use books, but I suggest you have to look for books that you can use. Why? With books, you are already guided. You know, books, they have studied what lesson to present first, second, third, fourth, how to arrange the grammar in that book, the vocabulary. They've studied it. They've spent hours, and experts made it. That's why it would be a lot easier on our part as teachers if we use books. So we can find our own material if our school doesn't provide us books. But yeah, that's my suggestion. Always maybe look for resources, your own resources, if they are not provided. So we can just probably at least your guide, your guide of what to teach first, the content of your lesson, what grammar to teach first, what vocabulary to introduce. Because if there's no book, then probably you end up teaching almost anything, you know, because when we put in so much, also we might drown our students with so much information, or when there is no, structure. If the structure we're presenting is not according to uh, research and studied presentation, then we might end up having nothing at the end. So that's the worry about not using books. Is there a video for this workshop I attend? I am late. Yes, it's recorded, Sarah, so you may um, review this one later. How to teach grammar to pre-intermediate students and not to be boring. What I do with grammar A and T school, or Betty, is discovery. Discovery method. When we say discovery method, do not lecture, do not explain, but rather give them activities to discover grammar. So, for example, a very simple one that I have in mind right now. Well, this is pre-intermediate. So let's say present perfect, for example, and then you have to have a context. There must be a scenario of this grammar. Let's say travel experience. So with this travel experience, and then your goal is to teach present perfect. You don't present with, okay, class, our lesson for today is present perfect. No, maybe you want to show a picture of a beautiful place and then put them in small groups and ask them to write as much sentences that they could about this picture. And then from these sentences, put them on the board and then highlight if they're using certain sentences that would fit to the grammar focus that you will be teaching. And that is highlighting. After highlighting, you are now pointing out that this is our grammar lesson. And then ask them, why are we constructing this way? Why did we say, I have been to, let's say, I have been to Peru? Why not, I went to Peru? Why not simple past? Why present perfect? Then they are going to again talk about it and discover and make use of the rules by themselves. And in many books, especially Cambridge books, Oxford's books, Macmillan books, these are the way they present it. If you have noticed that one. For example, here, there's no explanation of I play basketball, that I is the pronoun, play is a verb. It's just colored. And then with this color, students will say, okay, play, action word. That's how I approach grammar, even to low-level students, Betty. Could you please explain the activity that we can use in the question, look and read again? Because I was far away and I didn't hear it well. What's this one? Um, What do you mean by look and read again, Hagar?
I play basketball on Wednesday. This one, graphic and grammar.
Ah, okay. For this one, in the beginning, this one,
No, the other one, grammar.
the grammar part. Ah, wait.
I play in the weekend.
Ah, I see. So the same as I have mentioned earlier, when we teach them grammar, we present examples. And when we present examples, we highlight, maybe we use certain colors to highlight the meaning of that word. For example, play is blue. Um, I may be writing, I play basketball on Wednesday. I, let's say, I have music lesson on Tuesday. So play and have will be um, blue, and then I don't will be red. Then when I present that on the board or projector, I will ask my students to talk about the sentences, why they are in blue, why they are in red, and then from there I give them time to discuss, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then give them worksheet to see if they are able to do it on their own. If they can answer it well, then it means they're able to discuss properly. If not, then I'll input. So I'll highlight again, play is action word. Then don't is negative, meaning I I don't do it. Uh, but do is I do it. As much as possible, we limit explanation. Why? Students have limited English capability. So if we explain too much, the more that they'll be drowned. Uh, but rather have some more actions, examples, presentation.
Okay, what the activity you told us to cut this in papers?
Jigsaw reading. We call it jigsaw
Y-
reading.
Yes, I want to know how to do it.
Just for example, cut the reading part into paragraphs. So if you have a story, maybe a story has 4 paragraphs, then divide it into four groups. Then the class will be divided into 4 groups. Let's say Jack and the Beanstalk. I was recently I taught grade 3 kids, and then they are grade 3, and then our lesson was Jack and the Beanstalk. There were certain, maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs in that reading, so I divide the class into 6 groups. So group 1, paragraph 1, group 2, paragraph 2, and then ask them to read, so it's shorter. So if it's shorter, it's a lot easier to digest for them. They can highlight vocabulary that they don't understand. They can process it easily compared to having the whole story read by them. Then after each part they read, then I, of course, as a teacher, I know who's good in each group. So I will just ask these good students, stronger students, to move to the next group to talk about. Maybe group 1 leader will go to group 2, and then he or she will share, okay, in group 1 we talked about first paragraph, it talks about this and that. Yeah, so they go around, and then after doing that, I give them the worksheet, maybe asking them WH questions.
Okay, like that we practice it. We practice speaking, right?
Yes, reading and speaking. Yes. So because
Okay.
what we're doing is, language teaching is nowadays, it should be integrated. We cannot just say I'm doing reading alone. It has to be, it involves listening, reading, writing, speaking still. It has vocabulary as grammar. So everything is in it. Only that maybe there is a certain focus. Maybe reading is the focus. What else? So yeah, so this is how I manipulate the book to make the book, as I call it, bring the book to life. I understand when students, especially low level students, elementary students, when you begin using books, that's the time that their energy will be down. They will say, oh my God, not again. But if students know how you make use of the book, how you recreate the activities from the book to make it into real life activities in the classroom that will be fun for them, then they will be excited to use books, and they will not have that the same feeling. So sometimes it's us teachers who are limiting our students, and it's us teachers who are causing our students negative feeling towards our lesson and towards the activity and towards the skill that they are learning. So how do we correct that? We begin by doing certain energy changes. Energy in the classroom is very powerful, and who controls the energy? It's a teacher. How do we control it? Yeah, the high, low, high, low. As a teacher, I'm really not an active teacher. I'm not the kind of teacher who is funny, who is animated, but I have to find a way to make my class a bit fun by using manipulating the energy of the students. So that's what at least what I can do on my part, because I'm not a funny teacher. There is a tendency that I become a boring teacher. There's a tendency that I become, because I'm a quiet type of person. So, but in class, I cannot be quiet. In class, I cannot be who I am. I have to make the lesson interesting. How? Changing the energy of each activity, making sure that it's controlled, making sure that it is varied, and not just teacher to student, teacher to student, teacher to student. It's not just book, 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 worksheet, worksheet, worksheet. It's not gonna work. So I have to find a way to manipulate it. And so to easily think of how you can change the energy, think of high energy activity first, low energy then, high again, low again, and end it with high. Let's say your class ends with writing. Writing is low energy, and that's not good. So how do you end it? There must be a time after they have written. Maybe you do it in pairs, or maybe you ask them to put their writings around the room, and then they're going to give, what I do is we vote. I give them stars to put into whoever has good writing. At least they're standing, and then they're going to talk about whose writing they like the most. So we end the writing with high energy, because sometimes we are limited also to the kind of steps that we are going to do. So I hope I was able to share how we manipulate the book and the lesson planning. It has to do with
Just
lesson planning,
one
actually.
question for you. I would like to ask about something. How can I divide the time between solving the book and doing the activity?
How can we divide again?
The time between solving the book and doing the activity, because we have a curriculum, we should finish it. When we have books, we should finish the books. So how can I do both in the class? Because I feel sometimes that the activity takes a lot of time, and
Correct.
sometimes the session ends without doing anything in the book.
And we have to balance it. So what I do is I don't do other activities. I don't create other extra activities, but make use of what's in the book. For example, you're looking at right now grammar focus. So after I have shown to them the video about I play basketball. Okay, let me just play the video so that you will see what this one is all about. So what they will see is this one. It's just a 1 minute and 48-second video. So it's Wednesday. This is the person talking. So I might, if I play this video, I will pause this and I will say, so class, is it Wednesday? This one is Wednesday, because they look at it, it's Wednesday. We say, yes, it's Wednesday. So is this I? Yes, it's I. So meaning I'm guiding them that he is the one speaking and making this sentence, and not him and not them. So I would say, so what was his reaction? What was his facial expression? What was his face? So that students will see that there is some negative sentence. So then I would say, this one, is it I? They say yes. And is this Tuesday? Yes. So I'm going to just highlight some key information. And then earlier, he said, is he happy? No. Maybe they would say no. So the shaking of the head, that means something not, right? So that you can point that out. That's it. Now, if I am, for example, if my class is Monday and Thursday, I can make my own sentence. I teach English on Tuesday. So I'm making my own example, myself as an example. So students can relate. Okay, teacher is I, teach, and then yes, that's correct. I don't teach English on Monday. So they can say, yes, we don't have Monday class. So don't. So that they can, even if they can't really explain it to you, but they can already understand behind their head what you're trying to say. That's the most important to them. And then ask them, we call it CCQ, concept check question. Questions answerable by yes or no. The one that I said earlier. Is it Tuesday? Is it him that's talking? Then they say yes, no. Then it's enough for you to know that they got what you're trying to say. So when that is clear, that's the time that you make a follow up with a reinforcement. High energy activity. High energy activity. So I will um, have these words probably inside a box and then ask them to run and form these words into a sentence in groups. Then they do it maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's just there are 5 questions, so they should do it less than 1 minute each. So after 2 or 3 minutes of doing it my group, then I will ask them, okay, now you have formed these words into sentences. Now open your book and do it individually. So what they have done earlier as a group, they do it now individually. And this time it's faster because they've already done it. They know already how to make it by themselves.
So by this, I will save time for the session.
Yes. So it's gonna be
Okay.
faster. So the whole activity will just take you maybe 5 minutes all in all.
Okay.
And
Okay. Thank you so much.
initially it may take a while, Hagar. But if you keep on doing this over and over again, students become familiar. That's why it's important that we have consistent, clear structure in the lesson planning that I mentioned earlier here. Because
My biggest challenge, they are kids. So sometimes the kids take a lot of time in activity or takes a lot of time in writing. And because in order to make the activity with kids, you feel like the class needs to have, you need to order the class and get them ready. So that's why I feel sometimes the activity takes a lot of time in the class.
yes, that is a common feeling in the beginning. But as you keep controlling the time, they will get used to it. They'll be able to learn that there is time limit to everything that they do. As I've mentioned to you, I've taught as young as 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, zero level students, and you know, in the beginning it may be slow, but once they get the routine, then it becomes faster later on. Maybe you can sacrifice few meetings because you're introducing something new to them. Anything else? Do you have more questions?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Who else? Some more? Are we good? I hope I was able to share to some of you how we do it. This is part of what we do in the training in ITTI TEFL or training that our teachers are attending. So with that, thank you very much. And Lillian.
Hello, Ace. Thank you very much for all your knowledge and for sharing it with us. So just to let you know, we are going to hold a workshop for English teacher. We are going to go deep in this matter using the communicative approach,